You're listening to The Real Wealth Show with Kathy Fettke, the real estate investor's resource.
2020 has been one of the more unusual years of my lifetime, and probably the most important time to be aware of the importance of asset protection. I'm Kathy Fettke, and welcome to The Real Wealth Show. We're talking a lot about protection and the issue of that in the news, and that also applies to your assets. And my attorney and asset protection specialist, Clint, is here to share why it's more important than ever, and along with some new rules that we need to be aware of, new issues, but also the good old steady ones that we've had, the tried and true asset protection measures that have been around and that many investors use. So Clint, welcome. Welcome to the Real Wealth Show.
Thanks for having me on. Good to see you.
Good to see you. You've been so supportive of Rich and me over the years, and many of our members at Real Wealth on how to structure their investments for the ultimate asset protection. I don't know if you know this, but Rich and I were just recently sued again, the most ridiculous lawsuit yet. And it's a vexatious litigant. I didn't even know what that word was until last week. What is that?
Means they're a pain in the ass. Is what that does. And you're going to spend a lot of money. You're going to win, but you won't get a dime out of them. We actually went through something similar last year, and we ended up putting the person in jail. And they're supposed to be in jail for up to 3 years. And because of COVID, they released this person after, I think, 2.5 months. Oh. And so she's back out there again, starting up, it appears, we think, doing the exact same stuff she was prior, why she went to jail. And we have I think it's $199 million judgment against her.
Wow. Well, this person has sued so many people unsuccessfully in California that he's living in a hotel in Arizona, filing his own lawsuits. He just did 20 over the last few months, and we were named. It really a completely unvalid. In fact, I wasn't even involved. I'm not even involved in the thing I'm being sued for. It's bizarre, but if they name you, they name you. So let's talk about the basics. Let's start there. We just did a 3-part series with you at Real Wealth. We only have 20 minutes today, not enough to get into the details. So if people really want to get into the details of how to structure these things, go to realwealth.com. And we have archived webinars there. It's free as a member, and it's free to be a member. So you can just join at realwealth.com. But the first, of course, what's the first layer of asset protection that everyone must have, just like as a basis?
Well, you talk about that. The first thing I always tell people is you have to appreciate the risk. That if you don't appreciate the fact, like you just talked about, that you can be sued for doing nothing, or for the most innocent of mistakes could land you in a lawsuit and you're forced to defend yourself. And many times, like take yours, for example, is your insurance covering the bill for you?
I didn't even check. I
Probably
should
not.
have asked you. Probably not. No, I didn't even bother to check.
No, and that's the problem. So many real estate investors receive bad advice. They think, well, the first thing I need to get is insurance. You still need insurance. When you ask what is the basic, you have to have the insurance to protect yourself, protect your assets. But the problem in relying on insurance is just what you brought up. The insurance is not going to cover that type of claim. And as real estate investors, there's so many different claims out there that you could be hit with. And the more the common ones that typically arise, you're not going to be protected by your policy in those situations. That's why you want to take a step back and then put together a structure that will minimize your overall risk exposure. And there's different ways to do that. We talk about in this series how you can use LLCs, but one of the things why I think people need to go to the website and watch those videos is I also discuss how you can own your entities, your real estate anonymously, because you're an attractive target. I mean, not just physically. I mean, they want to go after you because of your assets as well. And they see that in anybody that, has something and they're perceived to have wealth, then you become this attractive target to the other plaintiff. Well, you don't want your assets to be held in a way where people can trace them back to you. And part of structuring is about creating anonymity around your investments.
Yeah, that was one of the things Rich and I learned early on is it should appear that you actually own nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
100%. People
Mhm.
often ask me, they go, well, if you own it, if you don't appear to own anything, Glenn, how are you going to get a loan? Well, it's only from the public's perspective that you
Mhm.
appear to own nothing. Everything shows up on your tax return. So when you go into a underwriter, you turn in your documents, they're going to know what you have and you disclose on financial statements. But yeah, just like we worked on with the two of you to create this structure to keep your assets off the radar screen. I think that's the first step, and everyone should do that because they can't sue what they can't see.
Yeah. So again, this well, I think you know of several of the silly lawsuits. One was that we didn't have the right audio equipment at our live event, and someone in the back row said he couldn't hear it. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that one was dropped. The most recent one was this this deal I invested in. It wasn't even a project I was running, just a deal I invested in, and it didn't go well. But this guy was trying to buy it at a discount, and that fell through. So he sued all the owners because he didn't get the deal he wanted. Like crazy, like basically trying to steal our equity, and he's now
Yes.
suing us for it. Makes no sense. All these people, invested their money and are at risk of losing it, and he's still suing them. It's very strange. But the point is, it's not even it's not even our basic real estate. Like if you own a property, you get insurance on it. And this is what many people say, myself included, your first line of defense is good insurance on your
Mm-hmm.
property for a lot of reasons. I mean, if it burns down, you want to be able to, and hey, I'm in California, so this is an important topic.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you have good fire insurance. Would you agree? Like obviously we want to have good insurance on the property and on your business, but it doesn't necessarily cover a lawsuit.
Absolutely. And that's what I implied, is that insurance is crucial. You have to always carry insurance. If you don't carry insurance and you just put it into an LLC, then you won't get the protection of the LLC, because you have to acquire enough insurance to insure against whatever your reasonable risk of loss is with that property. So we acquire the insurance, but we don't rely on the insurance to always be there to protect us, because as you brought up, fires, great. Replacement value stuff, you need it. The standard slip and falls, perfect. But how about that tenant that you have who, now that he's laid off, he decides to start his own home-based business inside of the rental house? And it consists of taking some old batteries out of the garage, getting some cough syrup and whatever else goes into meth, and he starts mixing it up on the stove. And of course, he's going to disable the smoke detectors because you can't have those going off. It disrupts your cooking. And he passes out from the fumes. And then the house burns down and he's killed. And then you're sued for not having working smoke detectors in your property. Where are you going to be at the end of the day with that type of lawsuit? Defending, coming out of pocket. That's why you need that LLC in place, to prevent that from coming and attaching to your other assets.
Yeah, and maybe a step before that is make sure you really, really vet your tenant.
Yeah,
I want to just let our audience know we've never seen that or heard that happen, but it can happen. Things can happen.
it's happening to one of
Someone
our
can.
clients right now.
It's happening to a client right now.
Yeah,
What?
unfortunately. Yep. And the worst part
Oh,
about it is he refinanced the property. And so the details matter here. And that's why you want to have your plan reviewed periodically to make sure that everything is operating the right way. He pulled the property out of the LLC that we set up for him to do a refi. He was working with a CPA. They forgot to put the property back in. We didn't know about it, of course. And as a result, when this lawsuit hit, the wrongful death action's been brought against him by the guy's family members. It's in his own name. So he's completely exposed on it personally.
now, Clint, there are people listening right now who might think this is just too much trouble. I don't even want to own any assets if people are going to always want to sue me or attack me because of it. Yet you are an attorney. You see every possible case that
Mm-hmm.
can happen and protect people, but you also own, you're an investor. So
Mm-hmm.
why do you take the risk?
Well, I mean, here's the way I look at it. I hope for the best, right? That I'm never going to be sued.
Mhm.
So in the event that it does happen, I want to make sure that I've protected myself so I don't risk everything. So my portfolio is now closing in on 150 properties. And I take the risk because of the reward. I mean, why do we invest? We invest for different reasons. We want current income. We want retirement income. We want to build generational wealth. I mean, who doesn't like going to the mailbox to pick up a check every month? that to me is why I've chosen to invest, so I can live a lifestyle during retirement that I'm comfortable with and that can pay for the things that I want to do. And that can only be achieved, from my opinion, through real estate. I saw it growing up. My dad retired at age 50. And so what you're doing is you're giving people opportunities to create that wealth for themselves. But at the same time, if you're going to be a good steward of your wealth, you're going to make sure that you're protecting it from the potential claim that could be brought against you. Who wants to be 65 years old, retired, collecting $20,000 a month from their rental properties, and then get served with a lawsuit and potentially jeopardize all that income? No one. And we've run into people time and time again at our events that have been in that situation, and they have to start over. It's too difficult. Yeah.
But kind of coming back to, why bother if it can be taken away, and there's risk to it, but there's also risk to not doing it. And I know that's not really your topic of expertise, but I mean, you could also end up being 60 without any assets to lose.
Correct.
That's not a great alternative either.
Not at all. I mean, there's risk in everything. If you there's a risk in driving a car. You could be involved in a car accident, so we don't drive. I mean, what you're doing by investing in real estate is, as I stated, you're doing things not only for yourself, but for future generations. And to say, well, it's too much effort. Nothing that is worth anything is going to be easy in life. And if you want to take that approach, you're not going to get from life what you hope to derive from it, in my opinion.
That's really, really great advice. So, all right. Well, if you would like to have a retirement you can count on, and listen, there's risk in the stock market too. We've seen people reach 65 and they've saved their whole life, and then the stock market crashes and it's not there. So again, there's risk in everything, but at least with hard assets, there are options. There's insurance, then LLCs. Now let's, again, the details, the in-depth webinars that we did with you are on our website at realwealth.com. It's free to join. You can watch them there. We don't have time to get into all of it here, but why an LLC? Is that the right structure for
most real estate investors? It's going to be the right structure. If it's put together properly, then it's going to give you the benefit of minimizing your overall risk exposure. So if something happens with the property, you're protected. Again, if you set it up properly, if you get sued individually, the real estate will be protected from your lawsuits as well. The other benefit of the LLC is that it allows us to set it up in a way in which the tax benefits of real estate flow down to you, and you can use those to offset other forms of income if it's structured properly and you're doing the right things from a tax standpoint. So this hybrid entity is uniquely suited to real estate investors, and that's why we make it basically the foundation of any planning for the passive real estate investor. And I want to emphasize that, because when you go on the active side, wholesaling, flipping real estate, Airbnb type activity, then you have to look maybe at a corporation.
Okay, we do need to talk to you about that. Rich and I will be calling you later about that. That's a really good point. There are added benefits to having these structures with the recent tax changes. I mean, anything recent and new that we should know about over the last few years or even this year?
Well, I think what's most notable, two things that we've been focusing on for our clients. Number one is cost segregation on residential real estate. Many CPAs never even look at it. They don't think that it works, and it does work. If you have residential real estate you've had 3 to 5 years, under 5 years, even you can go beyond that, but typically at that time frame, it's most beneficial. We can come through, do a cost segregation study, accelerate some depreciation, pull in a lot of deductions that you can use to offset your income. So that's something that I think is beneficial that people should explore. The other issue has to do with the CARES Act and your retirement plans. If you have IRAs, 401ks, there's an unprecedented opportunity for you to tap into those accounts if you so desire, and to pull out up to $200,000. And you have access to these funds for 3 or 6 years, depending on how you take the money out, which you can then use to jumpstart your real estate investing, so you can start generating passive income outside of your retirement plan. Because everybody always asks me, well, why would I want to do that? Because if it's in the retirement plan, I don't pay tax on it. You're right. But if you want that income coming in now, because maybe your wage, your W-2 job is taking a hit or it's in jeopardy, why not start replacing that with rental income. Here's the way you can do it by getting that necessary cash you're going to need to buy and finance the properties.
That's one of the unique services that you offer, is that you understand both the tax side and the legal side, and your company helps people with both. Uh, I've often, it took me a long time to find you, because I tried to find a good accountant who actually maybe didn't own real estate, so they didn't really understand it as well as I wanted them to. But then I'd go find an attorney, and then they were in conflict with what the accountant was saying. So again, we were really happy to find someone who could put it all together. But what are some of the mistakes you see people doing that come to you, like me, who tried to gather this information from different experts who were not aligned?
I think the number one mistake that people make is that they have someone, like you just stated, one guy to work on the asset protection, one guy working on the tax. They're not on the same page, and neither one of their individuals understand that real estate is a business. And if you don't look at it like a business, it's going to make it, in my opinion, difficult for you to achieve your goals, because the things that you're doing, setting up the entities the wrong way, choosing the improper tax elections, it's going to hold you back, because a lot of investing comes down to using other people's money, borrowing money. And you can either help or hurt yourself the way properties show up on your 1040. And something that I've experienced in my own investing over the last 20 years is that by not doing it right, you can take yourself completely out of the game or struggle to get that next property. But if you do it the right way and your tax returns looks the way the underwriter needs them to look, then you'll find that it really smooths out the process for you, and it no longer becomes such a challenge. I've lived through those challenges, and I'll never go back to that. And once I made this shift, the mental shift from talking to actually experienced real estate investors like yourself, when I first started out, I started seeing this difference. Some guys were, generating 30 properties within 4 or 5 years, and the other guys had 3. Why is that? They're both are doing the exact same thing. Well, it's because one person understood you have to treat it like a business. The other one didn't. They saw it as an investment, and they would just make these set up entities, and there was really no coherence to what it was they're doing. That's what makes this different, is because we take that approach to what we do with our structuring.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. All right. So the common mistakes that you see in the way that you keep saying you got to set it up properly. So what are some of the mistakes you see that people are making? I mean, I'm guessing one is that they just go online and they download a standard LLC from some website, and they think that's going to protect them.
The legal doom approach to asset protection. Yes.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, so what happens there typically is how the LLC is structured from a tax standpoint, what type of information it's going to show. When we set up structures, what we like to do is have the LLCs that own properties held by a common entity. We call it a holding LLC. Most people don't do it this way. They just set up the LLC and they own it in their own name. And maybe they have 4 LLCs, and husband and wife are owning them together, and they're filing tax returns on each of the LLCs. So they're spending a lot of extra money they don't have to on an annual basis. And so then they're thinking, well, is it really worth it because of all these tax returns? It's making their personal return look more complicated. So what we do is we minimize the number of returns that they have to file, and then we have it held by this holding LLC that will file a return. So we're making sure that the income hits their 1040 in a way that gives them the maximum benefit from a tax perspective, but also ensures that when they go in to acquire that 5th property, the underwriter is going to look at that return and say, all right, I see what they did. The way this income's carried on here, I can count 100% of that towards their debt to income ratio, and I don't have to discount it by 30% because they were doing it, it carried on the return the wrong way. So the mistakes of not knowing how to set up their LLCs to make their tax returns look better, that's the number one mistake I see with real estate investors.
Very, very good. All right. So once again, you can go to realwealthshow.com to listen to the 3 webinars. And then from there, there's even, I mean, you give so much education. So the 3 webinars will be a start, and then there'll be more, but they can also just, I mean, like us, we just call you and say, do it for us. I think that's easier if you're busy.
I think I got 3 emails last week.
Yeah. Okay. Final question. And it's kind of a political one, but when I go on Facebook, boy, we see all kinds of sentiment out there, and a big sentiment is, and always has been, angry towards wealthy people, angry towards those who own real estate, angry towards people who own real estate and take these tax benefits when they should be paying taxes. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are going to be on that is that There's you're not obligated to pay more than your fair share. And so the tax code is written in a way that incentivizes people to buy real estate, to take action, because it's beneficial for society. The people that protest against that do not have the desire or the incentive to want to buckle down and do the work to obtain the property. And so it's coming from, I think, a place of ignorance as to why we have these incentives. Because by buying property, you're putting it to use. The whole foundation of the country, one of the things that came with the property code is they wanted people to use property, to make it productive. You don't make it productive if you don't give incentives. If there was no incentives to buy the real estate and build stuff on it, then people wouldn't do it. So that's the tax code does this with everything. We incentivize people to have children because it's beneficial to society. So when I hear stuff like that, it just tells me, I mean, I don't know, I think people are just lazy. I mean, I've told my kids this. I said, you're only going to get out of life what you put into it. And if you don't want to go out there and you don't want to put your nose to the grindstone, then don't expect someone to give you a handout, because they're not. And I'm not going to give you one as well. So it's all up to you to get what you want out of life.
Yeah, and the tax incentives usually are directing money to certain places. Like after Hurricane Katrina, there was a huge tax benefit for reinvesting in that area, and it helped. And now we have opportunity zones that incentivize people to put their money not in the downtown areas that are already, beautiful and expensive, but into these areas that need the money, where they need the investment, and investors get incentivized. So that's why they do it. But again, anyway, I think you answered it, and I appreciate that. Now, there's also a lot of fear that in November it could change and some of these benefits would be taken away. I have seen personally, with no matter who the president is, no matter who's in power, it does seem that these real estate laws tend to be protected. I don't know if you've experienced that as well.
The tax laws seem to be protected. I think where I'm experiencing is more on the state side.
Oh, okay.
Where at the state level, they depend on the state in which you live. You find policies that make it very difficult to be a landlord, and so you should be aware of those state laws, those city laws. I mean, I can think of Washington State, for example. If you show a property, let's say you have 5 people that apply to your ad, and you're going to show the property to all 5 people. Well, you have to offer the property to that first person you show it to. Even if you don't want them, after you meet them, you're like, no way am I going to rent to this person. You still have to offer them the property. You have to go through it in order which you showed. So it's things like that. Or if somebody quits paying you rent in December, you have to allow them to live in your property for 2 months free of rent. You can't evict them. In the city of Seattle, that's a new policy there. So it's crazy things like that I think that impact real estate investors. So you really need to know the market. I mean, you do a great job at this. You said you guys figure out those markets where people can truly make money. It's hard to make money when the government, it seems like, is working against you. And that could only get worse depending on what happens with elections.
And that is why we don't invest in California property. That it's just too difficult. There's very little respect for landlords and property owners, and it's only getting worse. So you're right. And we do choose markets where people who are willing to buy property and offer it as a rental property to those who can't afford to buy it. They are forced to rent, and we want to provide the nicest and the best quality rental property, and we want to be respected for that, And so yes, we do choose markets where there are landlord-friendly laws.
Yep. And that's what you have to do. And what you're doing is by providing that person a place to live, it's also helping them get to a point where they can afford their own home ownership at some point in time. Or maybe they don't want to have a home ownership and they're just happy being renters. I have some tenants that have been in these properties for over 20 years and they're happy. Probably because my rent's so cheap and they figure I can't go anywhere else. But I appreciate the fact that they've been there that long. So I see there's no problem with being a landlord. I think it performs essential service.
I love what you just said, is that I have the same opinion. As I want to be respected as a landlord, but I also want to respect my tenants. And so there are some landlords out there that have taken advantage of tenants when there's, say, fires in California and very few rental housing. So the landlord's like, oh, we'll jack up the rents $2,000 a month. That's not respectful to the tenant. Nope. We keep our rents we'll raise them a little bit to keep up with inflation.
Mhm.
And sometimes we won't, just because this tenant has been a great tenant. So yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah, it's like with the COVID stuff that's been going on. What do you want to do with your tenants? I had some clients that were saying, well, I'm just going to evict them if they don't pay. I'm like, is that really the best scenario? Then you have to go through this process of finding a new tenant, and you know what that's like, how difficult that can be. If you have a great tenant, work with them, be respectful of them, and it'll pay off in the long run.
Absolutely. All right, Clint. Well, thank you so much for being with me here on the Real Wealth Show again. And I look forward to having you back. I wish we could have you out at a live event. Don't know when that will be.
I know.
Hopefully
soon, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
You do. Thank you.